I can use my foreview to really get me set up. And select those. Now, if I want those to become part of the same thing, go to Edit Mesh, and this has annoyed me for a long time. It seems like it should the Merge Vertex tool work best. But really, you just want to do a merge. And depending how well it's set up, it'll take those really close together and merge them into one vertice. And this is lined up pretty well, but it's up too high, so they weren't quite close enough. So let me undo that. And let me shift select these. And now I should have that whole thing. And now they're looking quite a bit closer. And hopefully now, when I shift select both of them at this exact same time, it'll be more likely to merge. So edit mesh, merge, and it still did not want to take it. One moment. Let me use, here's just merge vertices. And shoot. This always works for me. Edit mesh, merge. I'm going to try deleting the history on this. I mean, you'll always run into certain problems. And I think, well, let me see. Oh, never mind. It did go through. For the top ones, but not the bottom. Interesting. Edit mesh. Merge. Alright. Mesh. And merge these. This is why I'll show you in a second. I kind of like the pen polygon tool to get better. And you want to check and make sure, okay, that's moving on one vertice. So, yeah, it can be pretty picky, and it was giving me a little trouble. Normally it goes smoother than that. But now you can see it's one object, and if you look at wireframe, you know, those, it's deleted those other ones. Now hit the 5 back to smooth shaded. Go right click, go to object mode. What I find often works better, you want to kind of set it up so this will work. Go to faces, delete this face, and then do the append polygon tool. Append to polygon tool, yeah, right it there. And what this does, actually creates a border between the two. Make sure I'm selecting. And I also want to delete this face as well. Do my append to polygon tool. Make sure I select the right thing. Just hit delete if it doesn't go through. Alright, now it created that border. You can hit the G key and it'll take you out, and then you can do that again. Or the Y key, you don't even have to do anything else. You just hit Y and you're all set to go again. Anyway, once we hit that, and it's pretty much the same. It's got that extra edge, which is what I want to build in for, but they're part of the same thing. And normals, I won't talk too much about that. So that's, I can make a tutorial on that if you want, but they're pointing in a certain direction, but you can soften the edge, and that should get rid of kind of that hardness between the two of them. And if you double click the edge, you can kind of move it around and make it less of an obvious edge. So I didn't smooth that, I just kind of smooth out the normals so it's not as sharp of edges. If you decide you don't like that, well, you can either undo it, and you have to be in the polygon menu for this, or you can harden up the edges again, and that's a little bit smoother of a transition. So now this is one object, and we've combined those together, which is an important concept. Now I bet you'd like to know, well, let me first cover center pivot and delete history, and then we will get on to a little bit of texturing. So anyways, center pivot, we can see we're moving this around, and since we've combined this isn't really in the center. And this is an important thing on the shelf. You can do modify, and let me find it, center pivot. And I just have it right here. So when I do that, it should be more in the center of the object, and we can really see this when we rotate. It should rotate around pretty nicely. And if I create several new objects, move those around, and I use this all the time when grouping, because I control or command G, group them together, you know, well, they weren't placed too obscurely. Let me throw this one way out there. If I command G, won't really rotate it right, because your pivot's off, and even this, I've got it set up so it would do it nicer, but group those again. So if you hit the center pivot, that'll put it right in the center, which is where you want it to go, and they'll move nicely around it, whereas otherwise, you know, that's not centered at all. And you'll see in the future, there's sometimes where it'll really throw off your rotation, not be correct in any way at all. And then history. It took me a while to figure out history, and I was like, well, why do I really need to know about it? Well, if you go over to the attribute editor and you look, actually you can find it in both, but every single thing you've ever done to this cube is saved, which lets you undo it, and you can go back and say, you know, well, maybe, oh, the merge distance, when you're merging the edges, that's how far it will merge. So 0.1, they have to be within 0.10. I think in my other projects I turned that up higher, so it's a little more forgiving, to maybe 0.3 or 0.4. Anyways, so you can go back into all of these things and say, you know, well, maybe when I extrude that face, I should have made it smaller. And, you know, one of the early steps I did. So all of that is saved, and that's taking up a lot of your processor memory, especially if you've got a lot going on. And a lot of the times, well, I say, well, I don't want all that. I don't need all that. This is looking good. And, you know, it's not lost, because, you know, if I want to mess with that, I can go back in, right-click on faces, and affect those. So you, unless you're drastically making changes to what you did earlier, you don't really need that history. And let me show you, this is going into surfaces, but I could show you, when you're working with surfaces, yeah, you really have times you need to delete history. So I'm doing the Create EP tool under Surfaces, Create EP, and there's two different types. It took me a while to figure out the difference. The EP, wait, is this EP? Let me see. If I'm creating the EP under, once I create it, you can set the number of spans, but you can see it's curving. This is EP, curving based on the point, and the curve kind of goes around the point. That's what EP is like. So we've created that. Well, if I was CV, I almost use CV more, just it's more predictable, I feel like, but it'll take the points have span set to